Okay, let's everybody take a minute and get it out of your systems now.
Shut up, Meg!
Shut up, Meg.
Alright then. The Meg feels like a movie from about 15 years ago that somebody lost in a bunker, found and decided to release today, and not just in the sense that it features Jason Statham in a lead role and is debuting in theaters rather than on Redbox. It's a throwback to the heady days of the early 2000s when big-budget movies were less self-conscious about being big, expensive versions of B-grade schlock and weren't trying to either transcend or apologize for being big, stupid distractions. The kind of irony-free filmmaking that can sometimes render a bad version bulletproof because, you know, how are you gonna knock The Meg for being a bad movie when it's advertising itself as a bad movie? Fortunately, it doesn't need the protection. It's about as good as these things get, generally. The premise, well, the premise is right there in the advertising. There's a shark, but it's much, much bigger than all of the other sharks. That's pretty much the whole thing, but part of what makes The Meg an authentic B-monster movie as opposed to some kind of revisionist take is that, true to the genre, there's an almost comical amount of backstory, mythology, pseudoscientific babble, and plot stacked up in order to justify a premise that still boils down to shark, but bigger. So, the gimmick here used to explain the existence of a giant prehistoric shark in modernity is that a high-tech oceanic research station has discovered that the bottom of the ocean isn't actually the bottom of the ocean. It's an illusion, and there's another different secret ocean underneath the ocean, really. And a submarine crew that gets sent down to explore it becomes trapped there by something. The only person who can possibly rescue them is Jason Statham, here portraying Jason Statham, in this universe the world's greatest submarine rescue diver, forced to retire in disgrace after being deemed insane for claiming that he was only able to save most of the crew from his last most dangerous mission because the operation was interrupted by an attack from a sea monster. Oh, and also the research team includes not only the grudge-holding doctor who declared him insane in the first place because he was talking about a sea monster, but also his ex-wife is the captain of the trapped submarine. Yeah, it's one of those. Anyway, they end up creating a situation where a shark the size of a battleship leaves the secret ocean under the regular ocean. Again, that's the premise we're working from here, because reasons, and it's up to them to stop it before it can attack a super popular, very busy beach full of people off the coast of mainland China. Yeah, this is another one of those movies that's a co-production between an American studio and the government-run State Film Production Office of China, which means there are way too many characters because some necessary roles have to be filled twice so that there can be a Western character who makes nefarious, bad decisions that cause the plot to keep going, and a Chinese equivalent of the same basic character who can be stoic, noble, thoughtful, and representative only of the best intentions in humanity at all times. That feels different the other way around, doesn't it? Also, if you were looking for just how invested someone at Warner Brothers apparently is in now future Batwoman Ruby Rose, she's in the movie playing a hacker without much to do in the plot because, shockingly, computer hacking is not a terribly relevant skill in combating giant sharks. She's pretty much only on hand to be a cool person for Statham to single out as the only member of the crew he doesn't immediately dislike or dismiss on first glance because she seems like a cool person. Alright then. Is it fun? Of course it's fun. It's a giant goddamn shark being chased around by the veteran action star with the best balance between is this really happening, incredulity, and you can probably believe I'd pull this off credibility in his generation, and instead of handing the directing chores off to someone from the stunt and or animation team overly eager to make a jump to features, this was actually banged into shape by John Turteltaub, a veteran Hollywood journeyman of film and television with an actually pretty decent track record overall, so while The Meg doesn't really rise above being disposable nonsense, it doesn't fall below it either. Now sure, it could certainly stand to be better, even as almost deliberately bad movies go. One of the usual benefits to the formula of B movies is that minor deviations from the familiar deployed at exactly the right time and place can make all the difference between everyone remembering Deep Blue Sea or Anaconda and everyone more or less forgetting The Relic or some other movie I forgot. If any one of the characters had even once behaved in a fashion outside their prescribed archetype perhaps, or if the Meg itself had something in way of a personality, or if people in monster movies would bother to watch Gorgo so one particular plot turn would stop sneaking up on them. It could probably also stand to be a bit bloodier. It's a PG-13, and granted the shark itself is large enough that the damage it's doing isn't going to leave enough remains behind to qualify as gore to begin with in the logical sense, but a premise that's already this silly is really crying out for Piranha 3D levels of blood and or debauchery, and there's not really a lot of either. We're mainly talking chaos, explosions, waves, and narrow watercraft escapes, though I will give them credit for managing to contrive 3 separate scenarios where it sort of makes narrative and physical sense for Jason Statham to decide to fight a giant shark more or less hand to hand. What it comes down to is The Meg is a good enough version of exactly what it says it is. 3 stars. Look, it's August and it's a giant shark movie. What more do you want?